The leaders of North and South Korea took small steps to take that big leap towards peace on the Korean peninsula. Kim Jong-un made history after he crossed the border into South Korea to hold talks with his counterpart Moon Jae-in at the truce village of Panmunjom in the demilitarized zone. After 2 rounds of delegation-level talks, the two leaders signed key agreements. The signing ceremony was followed by a joint declaration by the two leaders. Both sides agreed to ending the war on the peninsula and working towards peace. The militaries from both sides will meet next month. The Koreas also agreed to help the families affected by the Korean War.
I have crossed such a borderline, and I come here.
북과남 언결의 소망과 기대를 무겁게 받아들이고 북남 인민들이 절실히 바라는 문제 해결을 위해 많은 의제들을 진지하게
We hope that the peninsula could hear more signs of peace, and on top of that, we are going to take a lot of effective measures so that peace and prosperity will settle down here in the Korea Peninsula, and we will have a new chapter of development. We will also take some tangible measures to implement the above-mentioned declaration and agreement. I and Moon Jae-in, during our meetings, have discussed a lot of topics and issues. And we have published the Panmunjom Declaration together. And I know that the whole world has been following closely on us. Here in Panmunjom, we will learn from the history and we will not repeat the mistakes before. We will keep such candid communication and treat each other as equals. From now on, the peninsula will not see war again. We will move towards the pathway of peace. In the past years, because of separation, our peninsula has undergone a lot of suffering, but we are convinced that we can move past such an obstacle. That's why we're standing here. Today, together with Mr. Kim Jong-un, we bear in mind the peaceful mission of the peninsula, and we have reached a lot of agreements and consensus. For denuclearization, we have built our consensus. This would be the starting point for the new chapter in the peninsula, and we hope that in the future both nations on the peninsula could work closely together and march forward with the same goal.
The historic summit began early this morning with both leaders meeting at the Korean border, shaking hands with one another for a really long time. Kim Jong-un is the first North Korean leader to set foot in South Korea since the 1950 Korean War. Kim told his host Moon Jae-in that he was flooded with emotion as he walked into the neighboring South. Before the joint declaration, Kim and Moon took part in another symbolic event by planting a pine tree on the military demarcation line. The tree dates from 1953, the year that the Korean armistice was signed, and was planted in soil brought from both the North and the South. Water taken from rivers in both the North and South was poured over it. In fact, the leaders' names and the words "Plant Peace and Prosperity" were inscribed on a plaque, which was then unveiled by both Kim and Moon. Earlier in the day, Kim Jong-un left the Peace House after the first round of talks. Both leaders had lunch separately before formal talks. Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in held a closed-door meeting at the Peace House. The delegation-level talks were held at the Peace House as well, where both leaders discussed a range of issues, including North Korea's nuclear weapons program. Now, as the two Korean leaders created history, the world was watching. The Inter-Korea meeting is significant not only for the peninsula but also for the rest of the world. Minutes after the meeting between Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in began, reactions naturally started pouring in. The US President Donald Trump has tweeted, and I quote, "After a furious year of missile launches and nuclear testing, a historic meeting between North and South Korea is now taking place. Good things are happening. but only time will tell. End quote. Japan praised the efforts put in by South Korea in bringing about this historic summit. But the chief cabinet secretary held back from speculating about any possible outcome.
本日の会談の実現に至るまで、これまでの韓国政府の努力を称賛をいたします。我が国としても、拉致、核、ミサイルといった諸懸案の包括的な解決に向けた前向きな議論が行えることを期待をしておりますが、これから行われる会談の内容、結果について現時点で予断を持って評価することは差し控えたい、このように思います。
The meeting between the two Koreas comes ahead of a Kim-Trump meeting, and the White House is keenly monitoring the developments that are taking place on the peninsula. In a statement, it said, and I quote, "We are hopeful that talks will achieve progress toward a future of peace and prosperity for the entire Korean peninsula. The United States appreciates the close coordination with our ally, the Republic of Korea, and looks forward to continuing robust discussions in preparation for the planned meeting between President Donald J. Trump and Kim Jong-un in the coming weeks." End quote. And with me on the broadcast right now is Ambassador Arun Singh, a former Indian diplomat, here in the studio with us. Also with us from South Korea in Seoul is our senior international correspondent Ramesh Ramachandran. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us once again on WION. Ambassador Singh, that tweet from Donald Trump says so much in very few words, which we're not used to when it comes to President Trump. But when he says only time will tell, is that more telling than anything else in that tweet?
So I would say that was a very realistic assessment, because in the first part of the tweet he has of course welcomed what has happened, and the meeting certainly is historic and with historic potential. But how it plays out, only time will tell.
Right.
Because we have to see follow up on the various things outlined, be it in terms of mechanisms for avoiding conflict, weaponization on the peninsula, and how they work for cooperation. All these things, whether they are able to take forward successfully, and how the meeting between Trump and the North Korean leader proceeds, because that will be critical. If US is not satisfied with its own process with North Korea, it will certainly work to stall the South Korea-North Korea process.
Absolutely.
And again, Japan, Russia, China, how they are looking at this evolving situation. And the domestic politics in both countries, North Korea and South Korea, how does that impact on the process? So I would say a very important step, but the real challenge will come in the subsequent days.
The meat of the matter, the devil lies in the detail, Ramesh. I think that's what you said to us when we were talking last time around. And I suppose it really does come down to the fact that this isn't a conventional marriage. It's not just two people who are involved. There's a very big third party that is forms part of this alliance. These are trilateral talks at the end of the day. And the United States is going to form a very integral part of where things go from here. And I suppose the president is, issuing a word of caution following all the optimism after today's meeting.
Indeed, Aisha, devil is indeed in the detail, and I want to highlight the reason why I say that. In the run-up to the Inter-Korean Summit, some Indian scholars and academics had pointed out in official discussions and in official circles that saying or insisting on complete denuclearization might be counterproductive. Why? Because instead of that phrase, if both countries were to use the phrase nuclear weapons free zone, that might suit the interests of both parties concerned, in this case North Korea and South Korea. And that finds a mention in the operative part of the joint statement. If I can read that to you, Aisha, and for the benefit of our viewers who might just be tuning in, and I quote the joint statement: South and North Korea confirm the common goal of realizing through complete denuclearization a nuclear-free Korean peninsula. South and North Korea share the view that the measures being initiated by North Korea are very meaningful and crucial for the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula, and agree to carry out their respective roles and responsibilities in this regard. South and North Korea agreed to actively seek the support and cooperation of the international community for the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, unquote. What it essentially tells you is that the onus is not only on North Korea, the onus is equally on South Korea and the US also. Remember, South Korea lies under the US nuclear umbrella, and there are nuclear American troops on the peninsula and American nuclear and strategic weapons in South Korea and other islands in the Indo-Pacific region. So clearly, the statement makes it clear that it is incumbent upon both parties, or all parties involved, North Korea, South Korea, and the US included, to work together for the common goal of denuclearization. So that, to my mind, is significant takeaway from the summit. It is not just for South Korea to do it. It is equally incumbent upon South Korea and the US also to reciprocate in kind going forward. And that, to my mind, remains the central challenge which will be encountered by Donald Trump when he meets Kim Jong-un come next month or early June.
All right. Before we go any further, Ramesh, thank you for that perspective. Stay with us. Visuals on your screen right now are live visuals of the dinner that's taking place in South Korea. That is Kim Jong-un's sister on your screens right now. Lots of smiles around the table. Remember, Kim Jong-un's wife, Ri Sol-ju, also joined the dinner earlier this evening. There was uncertainty about her attendance for the dinner earlier in the day, but a statement was issued a while ago to say that she will indeed be attending the dinner. Moon Jae-in's wife is also there, the First Lady of South Korea. She is also joining the celebrations, so to speak, in South Korea. Alright, so as those visuals play out, and we'll of course carry on watching those, but let's continue our conversation. Ambassador Singh and Ramesh, both of whom are with us on the broadcast right now. Ambassador Singh, we were of course going back and forth about, the word denuclearization in itself, what it means for the different parties involved. And I suppose I was looking at my notes from earlier when the two of them spoke, and it's very interesting because there were a lot of clauses to the operative parts of what was said. We will attempt to establish communication offices. We will attempt working towards denuclearization, and we believe the peninsula shouldn't have any weapons. So do you think those were very strategic inclusions in the statement? Because really speaking, nothing is set in stone.
Enough caveats have been introduced. So it sets the direction, the aspirational direction, and where they would like to work without any firm commitment at this stage. Because as I mentioned earlier, the process can only evolve if all the surrounding countries and other players are also comfortable with it. And I think so this is the direction in which they would like to go, but they will now need to hold consultations with all the others, because when North Korea talks about denuclearization, clearly it is also looking at US presence in South Korea.
Absolutely.
And if US makes, as part of any agreement, some kind of a tactical withdrawal, let's say, from South Korea, how do others see that as US posture in the Indo-Pacific? Would that be seen as US retreat from the Indo-Pacific? And what does it mean for Chinese posture in the Indo-Pacific? How does Japan see US withdrawal in the face of any negotiation with North Korea? So there are a lot of consequences that will flow out of this, and so the process will be complex.
Undoubtedly, I think that's a given. There are a lot of question marks that remain, but what is a given, I suppose, at this point in time is that it is going to be a complex process, and there is a very unpredictable man in the mix over here, President Trump. We'll talk about him, Ramesh, in a second as well, but just for our viewers who are joining in, when the leaders of North and South Korea met each other at the military demarcation line earlier today, they symbolically united a peninsula that has been divided for decades. Kim Jong-un created history by becoming the first North Korean leader to cross the line dividing the two Koreas since the war came to an end in 1953. Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in first shook hands as each stood on either side of the military demarcation line that divides the two countries. They were even seen holding hands as they smiled at each other warmly. In a symbolic move, Moon then joined Kim on the northern side of the line before both leaders stepped over to the southern side. After crossing into the southern side, Kim and Moon were photographed with two young children from the South Korean village of Daeseung-dong inside the DMZ. They smiled and posed with the leaders at the start of the welcoming ceremony. Both the leaders enjoyed a traditional performance of Arirang, which is a traditional Korean folk song known in both the north and the south. Kim Jong-un entered the Peace House on the southern side of the DMZ and signed the guest book. He wrote, quote, "A new history begins now," end quote, hinting at North Korea's willingness to usher in peace between the two Koreas. The oval-shaped table in the meeting room had its own special significance. It was made specifically for these talks. It's 2.018 meters in diameter, marking the year of the historic meeting. That's 2018. The chairs are made of walnut wood. The flowers on the table were peonies, a traditional greeting symbol, and daisies, which represent peace. There were also some wildflowers picked from inside the DMZ. A lot of thought also went behind the snacks served to the journalists at the press center. Now, these were shaped after a widely popular cartoon character across South Korea called WION the lion. There was a bit of confusion about WION the lion. A lot of people thought it was a bear, but we did get confirmation later that indeed that snack was shaped as WION the lion, a popular figure in South Korea. So lots of symbolism, of course. Ambassador Singh with me, as is Ramesh Ramachandran. Ramesh, I'll come to you first. You know, we were talking about the unpredictable nature of President Trump, and you know, the conspiracy theorists are speculating that Kim Jong-un, by agreeing to all of this, by saying he's okay with denuclearizing the peninsula, that he's all right meeting Moon Jae-in and President Trump, he's really called President Trump's bluff, and the US president is now perhaps looking for, you know, that escape route for in case things don't go according to the way the United States had perceived them to. That tweet, for instance, looking at the last line there saying, "Only time will tell." Do you think there is some credence to this theory that President Trump might have been caught off guard by the North Korean leader's reaction, so to speak, on this entire situation?
Indeed, if I can borrow a Chinese proverb, Aisha, beware what you dream or wish for, it might actually come true. So in this case, Donald Trump might have to do some serious thinking, because Kim Jong has signaled his intent, no doubt. But if he goes ahead with his principled approval for the issue of on the nuclear issue, then it befalls on Donald Trump and South Korea to reciprocate in kind. So in a sense, Kim Jong-un, the young crafty politician from North Korea, communist North Korea, has literally lobbed the ball into America's court, in particular Donald Trump's court. Now both politicians, Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, are unpredictable men. They're both brash, they're both restless and listless. So it remains to be seen whether they can evolve a working relationship between now and when they do eventually meet sometime next month or in early June. But the crux of the matter, Aisha, is that if Kim Jong-un can get a security guarantee from the powers that be, namely the US, then he might be tempted to take the next step towards denuclearization. But until such time, to my mind, he will retain his nuclear weapons. You can't possibly or probably put the paste back in the tube once it's come out. So to be very honest, I don't see the possibility of him relinquishing or voluntarily giving up his nuclear weapons until he gets a security guarantee that will ensure the survival of his regime for the immediate and the long-term future. So the onus really is on South Korea and its treaty ally, the US, to take the next step, so to speak, and convince or reassure North Korea, Pyongyang and Kim Jong-un in particular that they can work together in the near term and resolve contentious issues in a phased manner going forward and not put undue pressure on North Korean regime to deliver results immediately. So eventually, if things pan out the way they are expected to, one can expect resolution of some time going forward. But it is too early to call, and it's still a work in progress. We'll have to wait and watch how this process pans out going forward.
Absolutely. And, Ambassador Singh, Mike Pompeo just described Kim Jong-un as a smart guy. And, to take that Americanism a little further, diplomacy is a two-way street. I mean, you got to give a little, you got to take a little. And in this case, it seems like the North Korean leader has done his part. So is it really now up to the United States President Donald Trump to make sure that there is a reciprocation that comes through?
So very interestingly, till 2016, everybody used to speak about the North Korean leader being unpredictable.
Right.
From 2017, everybody spoke about the North Korean leader and the American president being unpredictable.
Right.
And today people are saying the American president is unpredictable because the North Korean leader has made some diplomatic moves.
He has
First,
indeed,
he
yes.
raised tension, then he diffused tension by what he has done. So I would say to some extent the US has already responded by agreeing to the meeting. Because so far, US has always resisted a one-to-one bilateral meeting with North Korea. And whenever they've agreed to a meeting with North Korea, it has only been in the framework of the six-party talks. Because the North Korean demand has always been earlier that we don't want to talk to South Korea, we want to talk to US, which is the aggressor in the Korean context from their point of view. And that we want to discuss with them peace and moving beyond the armistice. So their meeting South Korea from their position point of view is a major step. And the US agreeing to meet North Korea bilaterally outside the framework of the six-party talks is a major concession from the US. So I think everybody has made moves, but let's see what happens following their meeting whenever it takes place.